And he's like, Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. Like, why are these random people sending me Bitcoin? And why am I able to then send them Bitcoin back?
All changed. We love talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah, and he wants to make the world a better place. Like, brilliant. What a fantastic use of time and energy. Bitcoin activity through Noster meetups, through Bitcoin meetups, through Bitcoin OGs living there. There's quite a lot of like big name Bitcoin OGs that live.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to the Order Moon Show. Today is actually a very special one indeed, because we have the one and only Joe Nakamoto. Yo, how you doing, Joe?
I'm good, mate. Thank you very much for having me on. Thanks for the great introduction as well. I actually listened to the Arnhem interview before this chat today because, what they're doing there is really cool. And no one knows that it is the oldest, I think, the oldest Bitcoin circular economy in the world. And that's the one up in the Netherlands, which you've been to, Nas, right?
Yeah, I've been there. It was a fantastic place. I just want to say I can't believe we have you, Joe, on the podcast. I still can't believe that. It's great. Are you not an AI? Because recently we've got so many AI, attempts.
Promise I'm not AI. Look, AI is
Can you prove? Yeah. Going back to Arnhem, everyone needs to go there. Patrick is the man. Everyone needs to meet Patrick because he's been there since the very early ages. He's been through the on-chain payments. He's been through all the regulations in the crazy stuff we've got in the EU. And he's still there. He's standing and he's doing as much as possible. I mean, he's a living example how circular economy should actually exist and develop in this part of the world. Because, I mean, if you go to South America, it's probably different. They don't have the rules there. But anyway,
No, big time. I mean, that's the thing that I think we struggle with in like the West is that we have, Revolut and Venmo if you're in the US and PayPal and all these wonderful sort of instant payment solutions. So a lot of people are like, well, what's the point of like spending Bitcoin? What's the point of circulating Bitcoin? And you can point to Arnhem and be like, well, look, these guys have been doing it for 10 years. Some of these guys have been hodling it along the way. I know that initially they were just immediately cashing out to fiat. But like when you start to spend Bitcoin, when you start to circulate it, you then realize the magic of it. And I'm yet to see someone who has spent Bitcoin, not on-chain per se, but like on Lightning, like when they buy something for the first time, there is a bit of like an aha moment, like, oh my God, this digital thing that I've been obsessed with the theory and with the monetary history and with all that wonderful stuff, and then they spend it and they're like, oh crap, like I can use it like money as well. This is brilliant. And then they kind of sort of once they get a taste, they're kind of hooked and they want to spend it more. And obviously always replace or try to replace the sats you spend. The point is not to spend all of your Bitcoin at all. Like obviously the whole point is like if you go all in on Bitcoin, then you obviously have to spend some, and it teaches you good financial practices, right? Because you realize that I need to save more than I spend, otherwise I don't get the benefits of Bitcoin being this amazing savings technology. And so there's like a lot of caveats for using it in the West, whereas like you mentioned in the introduction there, like in Latin America or poorer economies, you tend to see the medium of exchange leading first. Like they will spend it and then they'll realize like later on that, oh, I should also save some too. But that's also because there isn't necessarily that savings culture in place. So like, we have more of a savings culture in the West generally. And I think Americans are like completely obsessed with it. Like it's normal to talk about stocks or shares or like retirement planning over dinner in America. Whereas like, I don't know, like we grew up in the UK, Lance, like I can't imagine doing that as like dinner time chat. It would be like after a few beers, maybe like when dinner's finished, but it wouldn't be like, how's your portfolio doing would not be a way of starting conversation. I don't know.
You're very right.
Wrong? Yeah.
You're absolutely right, actually, and it always amuses me when I do meet Americans how quickly the conversation goes straight to the money.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary to me. I'm very much like you, I think, Joe, sort of a bit reserved and, money's a bit dirty to talk about, of course, but we have all changed. We love talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's all we do now. All we do is talk about money.
So we are kind of talking about money, and, I really want to impress upon anybody watching this, and I notice slight repetition, but when Nasco and I first spent our very first Bitcoin back end of, well, mine I think was 2015, but 2016 we actually did a video of it at a BTM in Sofia, in the White Cafe. It's still available.
We had a sushi there, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And we had beers.
Sushi.
10% off back in 2016 if you paid with Bitcoin. This was the first place accepting Bitcoin here in Bulgaria. 2015, I think it all kicked off.
Yeah, it did. And it was just a marvellous moment to make that payment. And I think ever since both Nasco and I have been hooked with this whole concept of medium of exchange as well as savings technology. We did actually try back in 2016 to get some restaurants on board. We realised we were a little bit early with all of that, and we kicked off our efforts majorly last year. And really, one of the reasons we wanted to have the conversation is with you is to flesh out maybe some of the learnings you've had. I mean, I've seen you in Africa looking at how mining is. I mean, these places in the middle of nowhere, you cannot believe the goodness that Bitcoin seems to be offering some of the most impoverished areas in the world. But not just that, but other areas that are more medium wealth. And I really want to get inside your brain to some of the things that you've seen and how Bitcoin is, as a medium of exchange, is working.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I want to ask about that sushi place first, though. So it was 2015, 2016.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's still accepting now?
No, it's not actually. No.
Oh, it's still going, the business?
Doesn't exist. It was a bar, a cafe, which they did a sushi Friday or something like this. And they had this BTM machine where you can actually immediately put some cash in, get the coins, and then pay 10% off the bill. It doesn't exist. I think it hasn't been there. I think it shut down even before COVID. But yeah.
Do you still know the owner, or did you?
I know the owner of the BTM machine. He's really a lifelong friend. Amazing, isn't it? My first sort of Bitcoiner in Bulgaria. He was actually. Because I saw they had a BTM machine. Came in there, saw him in the corner having a beer, and he was the gentleman who'd put the BTM there, was managing it, sorting things out with a cafe, etc. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. So did you know if it was I know that the restaurant's closed down, but was that mini venture back then, was it successful for this guy? Was as a medium of exchange, is the BTM machine still going?
No, it isn't. Fortunately, it got hacked. Not the machine, but the technology behind it, and he lost money. And I forget the name of the machine, the one based out of Prague.
Wasn't that from Romania, I believe? Did
Romania.
They do any? Yeah. I don't remember the machine. I shouldn't tell the name. He's a bit of in the shadow, this guy. Yet starts
probably a good thing.
early.
You know, we're all in trouble in 10 years' time. If and when Bitcoin goes to 10 million, then we've got targets on our back, and that's when I'll become Joe Ethereum, and you won't.
Yeah.
I actually sold all my Bitcoin for Ethereum in 2019, and I've been poor the past 10 years. This is what I'll say. You've got to, right?
Yeah, all boating accidents, yes, for sure, yes.
But yeah, well, where do you want to go with this? Where would you like to? What do you want to talk about?
Where would you like to go? Because it's such an interesting topic how people connect with Bitcoin through medium of exchange. And you've seen some areas, and I'm very interested in maybe just picking up somewhere that you find it particularly fascinating.
Nice. Okay. I mean, I can talk about a project that I haven't published yet, and it's top of mind because I was scripting it this morning. And that was a project in Kenya, and it's actually Africa's largest informal settlement. It's sometimes referred to as Hollywood's slum because it's a bit weird, but because Barack Obama, Descent, Madonna, loads of A-lister celebrities have visited this slum, and they've all taken pictures there, and they've all sort of done the whole it's awful, but this sort of poverty porn thing of here's a terrible slum, and we're going to aid them with money, and they send aid or they set up some project, and then the slum sort of stays doing its thing. And the slum came to being because a lot of people come to Nairobi for jobs, but they can't find somewhere to live, and then they just end up in this settlement. And it's about the size of Central Park in New York, so it's gigantic, and there's a 250,000 people living there, and it's just shacks upon shacks, and yet it's become this sort of informal slum. So you can't get your Amazon parcel delivered there, and it's very hard to prove that you have proof of address if you live there. And yet there's also a mini economy within that. And lots of NGOs go there, lots of people try to help them out. And there is plumbing or dirty plumbing. There, we used the toilets there. We went for lunch there. We spent the whole day there. But the key thing is that we used Bitcoin the entire time, because there's an NGO that saw what happened in El Salvador with the Bitcoin as a legal tender thing, and thought, hey, we've got this NGO project in this Kenyan slum. How can we use Bitcoin as a tool for empowerment? It also helped that one of the founders was into Bitcoin already. And so he sort of sent some Bitcoin to the local lead this was in 2019, back when Bitcoin was less than 4K a coin. And he proved to him, look, listen, I can send this money from Canada to Kenya instantly, no middlemen, it works like this. And they're like, oh shit, okay, light bulb moment. How do we use this as a means of payment? Because in Kenya, you probably heard of M-Pesa. You might be familiar with that technology. It's like mobile money, so you can basically text people
SMS.
value. Yeah, and it was an amazing, incredible Africa-centric solution when it first came out in like 2008, 2009. I've probably got the date wrong, but whatever. And then it was great until they introduced KYC requirements because the government stepped in like 2014, 2015 and thought, hey, this is a money laundering scheme potentially. So if you want to move any more than like basically 200 quid a month, you've got a KYC. And the KYC meant proof of address, it meant passport, it meant ID, it meant that you had to have a level of literacy that perhaps you don't have because Kenya has like 75, 80% literacy rates. So it basically put up this huge barrier to being able to use M-Pesa. And prior to that moment, M-Pesa was a way of banking yourself. Okay, you were using the Kenyan shilling, which is of course a shit coin and is going to zero as well. But it was like this incredible leap. And a lot of people globally M-Pesa and said, this is like an incredible Africa-centric solution. But since the KYC requirements came in, it was like, well, fuck, what can we do? Because these informal settlements like Kibera, Slum, you've suddenly got a huge swathe of them living there that cannot use this system. And so the guys at this NGO, which is called Kibera, is called Afribit Kibera, just Afribit altogether. They saw Bitcoin and were like, oh, maybe we could use this to sort of bank the unbanked, literally like unbanked and underbanked peoples, and help sats to circulate and also distribute funds in that way. Because, prior to this, a lot of NGOs, and this is what some of my work in Peru covered, a lot of NGOs, you'd send like a charity or an NGO money and they try to distribute those funds and it would get to like a community leader or it would get to, the management on the ground. And then that last mile solution would be cash. And like with cash, there's a lot of slippage or wastage, which means, someone's taking some off, it's being lost, it's being stolen, obviously theft is much higher. And so it's really problematic. And so NGOs are sort of realizing that, oh, okay, instead of using cash as the last mile, you can use Bitcoin as the last mile. So this sort of solution that's taking place there, and it's really early days, but I was just blown away by it because, we get there and I get out of the car and a guy sees like the lightning bolt on my hat and he's like, Bitcoin, 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 like this will be the opening scene of the video, I think. And I was like, what the hell? Like we're in a slum in like Kenya and this guy's talking to me about Bitcoin. What's going on? Like I thought Bitcoin was for like billionaires and the rich, and it's because this company, or NGO rather, Afribit, has been teaching people. It's through the church initially because that's like the local meeting point, and Christianity is still very big in lots of parts of Kenya. And they basically, locals will get sats for attending classes. Could be English lessons, could be ICT lessons, could be just regular church attendance, and then they can circulate those sats at places that accept Bitcoin. And then they also did it through the motorcycle riders who are called Boda riders. And these guys, like, they absolutely love Bitcoin. They were very passionate about it. And another line from the documentary that I'm going to use is that I interviewed him in front of the betting shop. And betting shops across Africa are an absolute plague. They are just, it's absolutely awful that in the poorest areas of like the world, there are still betting shops trying to make money. It's parasitical and it's just grim. But, I interview him in front of this betting shop and I'm like, what do you think about Bitcoin? What do you think about, those guys behind you? And he's like, oh, well, Bitcoin, it's a win-win. With those guys, you always lose. And I was like, zing, perfect line. Thank you. Like I wasn't putting words in his mouth, but I was like, that's a great line for the documentary because he knows that with Bitcoin, his money is safer, it's more secure, it's faster, and it can go up in value. This is one of the risks, and maybe we could talk about this during the interview today. But these guys were onboarded when the Bitcoin price was from 30K upwards. So they've basically just seen volatility up. They haven't experienced a huge bear market yet. And that's one of the things that I kind of worry about generally with my videos is that I've done this. I started during the peak bear market of 2021, like when it crashed in 2021 from like 69K to 20K, right? So all of these places I've documented, they've only seen up, which is, pretty worrying. So this motorcyclist guy was like, oh, great, Bitcoin goes up in value. I'm happy days. But yeah, long story short, NGOs started using Bitcoin. They're circulating it and the prognosis looks really, really good.
Well, let's pick up on this price thing because it's something that comes up a lot, actually. Sometimes we like to say, yes, use it to medium exchange. And then, like just today, in the coffee shop we've onboarded in the centre of Sofia, fantastic. The owner really gets it, loves it, and he's got new customers because he's accepting Lightning. A big plug for us through our Order Moon app. Breeze, nice. Thank you. There's a young gentleman sitting there looking at things. I said, look at this, it's marvellous, it's so quick and no banks involved. And he says, well, I actually work for a bank. I said, so did I. I work for big banks. And I asked what he did and stuff. And I said, well, what do you think about Bitcoin? I mean, probably could not have been more than 25, 24 probably, maybe even younger. And he says, no, Bitcoin's just casino gambling. No, this is bad. And this is just a young guy who, I mean, typically in Sofia, they're pretty smart, these sort of people, particularly in the sort of hipster type specialty coffee place. And I was a bit surprised, actually, at the reaction, but it just goes to show, again, I know it's a cliche, how early we are.
Mm-mm.
It's extraordinary. You think that people are familiar with the name, the word Bitcoin, they've seen it go up, they've seen it go down, but they haven't really seen anything. They've just, actually, in reality, we're in our own echo chamber, they've just picked up it's super volatile and people lose money on it, something like that. So I am very interested in your point that, you know, what happens if, when, etc. We're in this another 3-year down cycle, 2.5-year down cycle, like in previous cycles. You know, what's going to happen then? Are we going to lose enthusiasm on some of these circular economies, or will the OGs keep everyone sort of in Kenya? They'll say, look, don't worry, we've been here before.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? It's a sort of OG Bitcoin insurance. But yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, we hope as well that the next bear market won't be as severe. And like history tells us that every bear market is less and less severe, right? So like, you know, if it does go to K, then maybe it drops to, you know, 100K rather than, you know, well, that's still a huge drop. Like I had a conversation with an OG who I won't dox recently, who got in 2010, and he was saying that like the first massive Bitcoin pump was at 2013. His friends were like taking the mick of him, being like, "Oh mate, you've been buying this coin since, you know, $60, but I just saw that it went from $1,000 down to like $300. It's all over." And he was like, "How are you not putting together that I've been in this since $60? It's at $300, which is still like way over like a 5x, and you're trying to mock me for it going from 1,000 to 300? Like, how do you not see that the trend is still up and that we're still doing like very, very well?" And I think that's also something that put me off originally when I first like seriously looked at Bitcoin in 2017, is that you see this run up from like 6K to 20K, and you see it crash to 3K, and you're like, oh well, that's it, it's over. And you just don't realize, in fact, that there's a 8-year history running up to that moment where it was from 0 to 3K. And so the only people that are losing money are the people that literally bought at the all-time high and sold at the most recent bear market low. And I think it's just one of those things that, you know, to the guy in the coffee shop example, if you just see that brief moment of Bitcoin news, which is price up, price crash, price up, price crash, you just think that it's crashing. And so you don't realize that the people that are actually in it and saving in it and using it and circulating it, they're still getting a pretty great deal. You know, obviously it hurts every time there's a bear market, and that's like sort of like the reason why I bring it up is that if you haven't been exposed to that bear market, then, you know, you've got to be ready for it. But at the same time, like longer term, zoom out, as I say, you're still okay. And it's I don't know how to get through to these people. Partly why I try to do the job that I do is because I want there to be more stories that are human interest or like on the ground stories that like attempt to cut through the price nonsense, because the entirety of Bitcoin Twitter, the entirety of like our echo chamber does focus on price. And yes, that is like one of the most important components, because number go up equals freedom go up. But we need to have more serious conversations about, okay, what happens when number goes down, like we just had, or, you know, the stories I spoke to, like the Kenyan Bitcoin mining story, because I was in Kenya for this township project and for the gridless mining project. Like, it's now almost at 100,000 views on YouTube, which just blows me away, because I'm like, wow, there is clearly, this proves there is proof of concept that if you make an interesting enough story about Bitcoin being used ideally in an interesting place as well, people will watch it, people will take something away from it. They won't just see Bitcoin as this speculative asset, this Ponzi scheme, this, you know, volatile thing. They'll see it as, oh my God, it's genuinely useful for things other than the price. And so I'm like, okay, I need to do more of this. You know, I need to tell more stories along that line. But it's I'm not going to lie, it's bloody hard.
Very hard, but congratulations and well deserved on that video. I think it's phenomenal because it doesn't go into price. It's a human interest story. It's alleviating poverty and improving quality of life, bringing electricity to places which definitely were not economic.
No.
The Bitcoin mining. And I think
it's a revenue share. It's a revenue share as well. So even when the price goes down, it doesn't necessarily affect the business operations. Because the common comment I got on that video was, yeah, but what happens when the Bitcoin price crashes? And I'm like, it is a revenue share. They're like, unless the Bitcoin price goes to -10, which is obviously not, then they're still making money. There is wasted excess energy. And this is the point that I just have to like keep drilling home. It's like the energy is wasted. That everything is built. This hydropower plant is just throwing energy into the ether, not being monetized. And suddenly Bitcoin miner comes in and takes, I think they take 70%, the energy company takes 30. But whatever that money is, even if Bitcoin goes to a penny tomorrow, that energy company still makes 1 penny. And that 1 penny is worth more than the 0 pennies it was when the energy wasn't being monetized. And again, I'm like, who gives a fuck about volatility if you're still making money regardless of what the price is doing? And that Gridless isn't alone in approaching, monetization of stranded energy in this way. And more people will hopefully watch this kind of content and be like, I have wasted energy. I could also monetize it with a Bitcoin miner by doing a revenue share as opposed to doing the more sort of volatile approach, which is just sort of like buy electricity at a set price and then sort of stomach the bear markets and really enjoy the bull runs. So again, it's just like there's this disconnect. This guy in this cafe that you bring up, he's just seeing the headlines of it's volatile, it's volatile, it's volatile. So it takes a long time to extract them from that and be like, no, actually, yes, it's volatile, and there are ways of dealing with it. And we're also having open conversations about the volatility and how to sort of like prepare yourself for that, because we know it is, as the media says, volatile.
That's brilliant story. Volatility is, it's a big one with everybody, actually, I have to say. And of course, going back to we're all interested in building circular economies and moving people, and I think it is a bit of a journey for some, most, I'm not quite sure, from this savings technology to spending, the spend and replace. And I'm wondering whether you've got any tips for us and for everyone else who's kind of hodled for quite some time now, whatever that time might be, but they feel they've got some cushion and they want to kind of get more into it and start spending some of those sats. Can we still call them sats? I'm going to call them sats.
Me too, don't worry.
And is there an approach that you're finding that works, that moves people along that journey to make Bitcoin more real by spending? Is there anything tips you can give?
So it's interesting because I'm just trying to think about my own behavior recently, and I'm still sort of orange pilling. I'm still known as the Bitcoin guy in my friendship groups, and I'm still like, people will occasionally DM me and ask me stuff because they'll have like got wind of it. And usually now I just send them a video and say like, this is what I do. Like, I'm not in this thing to like get rich. It's not some like, it's a not get poor scheme. It's not a get rich quick scheme. And so I try to address it that way, but I haven't really dealt with the why would you spend your Bitcoin thing in person for a while. It's mostly been online, and it's mostly been with people that just troll me saying like, because I've got lots of content of me spending sats and like demonstrating that like places like Bulgaria, places like Kenya and El Salvador and Costa Rica and Portugal and Madeira, so many places around the world, they do have this sort of spending Bitcoin economy going, and they're benefiting from it because, the more you have Bitcoin in your place, the stronger your place is going to become. This is just the way the world is going. And like, that's obviously a big incentive, right? But to these people that meet me, I'm not necessarily trying to persuade them to part with their sats, but I'd rather let my content do the talking and just be like, listen, these guys are having a pretty great time with their circular economies. And I think there might be more of an argument for why you should accept Bitcoin and why you should become a Bitcoin friendly merchant than necessarily like trying to persuade like friends and family and stuff to spend their Bitcoin. Like, and if it does come to the actual, you should spend your sats, then usually it's a question of starting small and setting them up with, Nosta's a really fun, easy place to start zapping people. Actually, yes, I recently invited a guy who runs a bunch of Airbnbs here, who knows that I'm into Bitcoin. He actually started buying Bitcoin because of me, and he's like very happy for it, but he'd like never spent it. And I was like, oh, come on to Nosta, and I'll invite you to Nosta. And he did like a, hi, I'm on Nosta, like as his first tweet. And all he was following on Nosta was Jack Dorsey, Jack Mallers and me. I just thought that was really funny because he knows me personally and he just knows Jack Dorsey and Jack Mallers. And I did this welcome tweet or welcome post on Nosta saying, this is his name and, welcome to Nosta. And he bumped into me a couple of days later and was like, Joe, why are these random people sending me Bitcoin? And why am I able to then send them Bitcoin back? And I was like, it's fun, right? And he's like, yes, but it doesn't make sense to me. And I was like, yeah, to be honest, I can't really explain that. Why are people willingly parting with their sats on Nosta? I don't really know. It's fun, right? But at the same time, it helped for him to break down this barrier of I shouldn't be spending my Bitcoin. Because suddenly he was then commenting on posts and zapping them as well, which is, sending small bits of Bitcoin, small sats, small amounts of Bitcoin to people on Nosta. And so suddenly realizing that, okay, this is also money that can flow and can circulate. And that's something that's like pretty cool as well. But when it comes to the actual use of Bitcoin as money, unless you're all in, absolutely spend and replace. And if you like the other, like this is a gripe I have, but I find a lot of people will go to Bitcoin friendly places and then spend dollars or spend whatever fiat currency they're using. And that I'm like, name and shame. That's terrible. Come on, like you're not a Bitcoiner if you go to a Bitcoin friendly bar and you spend fiat. That is BS. Come on.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, isn't it? When there was the pizza day and there were so many people posting with pizzas everywhere, and they all bought it with fiat. And what are you celebrating then?
Yeah. It's,
Yeah, but that's a massive challenge indeed.
Yeah, I mean, the Pizza Day, there are people that are currently asking questions like, was Laszlo Hajnieks even a legend? Maybe he was an idiot, like, for parting with his 10,000 Bitcoin. It's like, oh my God. Like, I know this is engagement bait, like rage trolling nonsense that Twitter and online social media sites are full of. But you get a lot of like Reddit people that are new to Bitcoin that because of this sort of hodl mentality and hodl sort of, it's infectious and it's persuasive and it's great, of course, because it persuades people to save their Bitcoin, but they do it without engaging their brain and realizing that, hey, like this Laszlo guy, he was the first person to make a sort of real world transaction with Bitcoin. He proved that it works as money, and you know that should be celebrated. On top of the fact that he also did some amazing contributions to mining, and like he was just a generally like a very useful guy as an OG. But like the idea that we should challenge the notion that Laszlo was like not good for Bitcoin, it's like what are you guys talking about? But, you know, newbies have got to come in, and they're going to keep coming in, and that's great. And we do have to deal with these sort of trying questions sometimes, and you've got to sort of you sometimes question the credibility of these lines of interrogation. You're like, are they genuinely curious, like they think that Laszlo maybe made a mistake there, or are they just trying to get, you know, social media credit and social clout? So yeah, that's the internet for you though, isn't it?
That's the internet, but the real world is, of course, as you rightly say, to orange pill people, bring on, if you have some sort of business, it could be an e-commerce business, it could be a physical business, coffee shop, restaurant, etc. If you start earning your sats, I think that makes the world of difference. And there are millions of businesses out there that can start doing that, and they will feel the love from the Bitcoiners, a bit like your friend who felt the love of all these sats coming to him for some no reason. But of course, sats, that's paying for your attention. Actually, I kind of get that, you know. So I send you sats, Joe, and you, Lance, hi, yeah, great, you know. Not that we have to send each other sats to do that, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So an initial sort of way into send sats. But for a business to accept, my point is, I think that is incredibly rewarding for the person who's trying it out. They're interested, they're earning. And I think that's a start of a journey for many people who previously may be a little bit hassle buying, you know, exchanges, KYC, all that stuff. So I think that's got to be the message.
Yeah, no, big time. The importance of earning and becoming a Bitcoin-friendly merchant cannot be understated. It is so, so important. Like I've onboarded, to your point about, you know, encouraging people to spend sats. It's true that I've probably spent more time trying to encourage friends and family members to accept Bitcoin than to just simply spend it. And, you know, a friend of mine who has no interest in Bitcoin, so I can share his story. He's never going to see this. He recently bought a house near me, and he cashed out all his Bitcoin, and he, which is fine, he does him, but he's been accepting Bitcoin in his restaurants for the past 5 years now, since I'm sort of moved to near this area. You know, had a Mexican restaurant, then he had an Italian restaurant, and then he had another small, like, sort of pop-up restaurant. And me and sort of like the Bitcoin community in Portugal, we have been spending like quite a bit of Bitcoin there. Like it's a pretty good Mexican, it's a pretty good Italian, and he's also a mate, so I wanted to support him. And yeah, he ended up cashing out something in the region of like 15 grand's worth of Bitcoin. That was probably about 3.5, 4 grand's worth of actual meals, which ended up being his house purchase. And his businesses are still accepting Bitcoin. Late 2019, early 2020, he thought I was a moron. He thought I was an idiot, and he was just doing it because we were mates. He was just accepting Bitcoin because of that. And then 4 years later, it's like one of the most sort of convincing reasons of how he bought this house is because he had this extra 15 grand of Bitcoin that can put to his house. And so now he's like, oh, because I was like, are you going to keep accepting Bitcoin? And it's like, well, obviously, you know,
never stop.
It took him a while, you know, and he's not like super ingratiated in Bitcoin stuff, and he's not on Bitcoin Twitter. And I actually admire that. I'd much rather people just accept Bitcoin, like, ideally, they run a node as well. That'd be great. But, you know, we can't expect like everything. And then they go about their lives and they appreciate this thing. And it becomes a space where Bitcoiners can hang out and spend their sats. You know, he gets the benefits of the savings technology. It proves, again, that Bitcoin is useful money. And, you know, 5 years later, you're ending up being able to afford that deposit on that house you always wanted. And, you know, the cycle continues and goes on. Obviously, someone is probably listening thinking, what a moron. He sold. You know, why would you cash out? And why would you cash out to zero? And I would probably tend to agree. Yeah, I don't think you should ever sort of cash out to zero unless like your life depends on it, right? Because, you know, your time is still more important than your Bitcoin. Yeah, it was, you know, he's still accepting Bitcoin, so he's still replacing to some extent. And I think that he's accepted for so long and he's seen those benefits, but he hasn't had that FOMO benefit, the FOMO before, which you've probably had, Lance, with, or you both have, right, Nasco as well. Like, if you were spending Bitcoin in 2015, you probably have that moment of shit. I sold some into one of the pumps, and you're like, I shouldn't have sold it. I should have held on. And so you kind of have to go through these various cycles, and people aren't just going to get it in 3 months, 6 months, a year. You know, the people that these characters that pop up online, right, that have been in Bitcoin for like a year, and they're like saying stuff, you're a bit like, like I wouldn't be raising my voice at that level. There are stuff that I will not wade into, and I like the op return drama. People were DMing me, being like, "What's your take on this?" I was like, "Mate, my take is go ask someone clever. Like, go ask someone who's been in Bitcoin for 10 years. Don't ask the guy that's like been. I've only been properly doxed in Bitcoin since late 2020, early 2021, and I've been like studying Bitcoin as a journalist, which counts for nothing, since 2017, 2018. So you know, I've been on the wrong side of the fence for a few years, and then I've been like a fully Bitcoin advocate for 4.5, 5 years. So like, why would you trust what I've got to say when there are these OGs that have been, you know, running nodes, writing the code, setting up Lightning nodes for way longer than I've even understood what Bitcoin is. So I think that there's also a bit of a reality check in there, and a sense of like, we need to be a bit more patient. That there's going to be some, I don't know, economies that pop up that will fail. Yeah, there have been economies that failed. You know, the Bitcoin El Salvador law got repealed. There's going to be loads of failures along the way, and a lot of it is just going to be from people making mistakes with this really complex and complicated thing. So yeah, like you say, Lance, the best thing to do is start accepting Bitcoin now, get that exposure now, and understand what it can do for you, so that in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, you're not making the mistakes that you will do today, you will do in the next couple of years, right?
And I think the other thing is, of course, if you start accepting and start going to some of the hubs or communities or circular economies, then you actually, again, sorry to use the cliche, you start stacking friends. And you go outside this money bit, and actually, if you're traveling, I know you've been to these incredible places, but it's really because of Bitcoin, isn't it?
Yeah. It was all thanks to
And I think that's the extraordinary thing, that if you're a digital nomad, or you're just a traveller, or interested in travelling, doesn't matter what age you are, you can always find kind of your tribe through the Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, that's it's a really important point as well. Sorry, Nasco, I cut you off.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a great mindset of the people you want to hang out with. It's just your mindset, and all the people there being into that thing, you want to hang out with these people. We had a great journey to Belgrade recently, and everywhere you go, as Lance says, you meet these people, and they're pretty much like, this is the people you want to hang out with.
Yeah, it clicks a lot easier, and it also means you've always got a way to do peer-to-peer trades. Because, you know, when you travel, like, you know, like I was in Peru, and I did, as much as I love to live on Bitcoin and try to live on Bitcoin, even though I don't have any Bitcoin, you know, sometimes you do need the local currency. And like, I haven't used a currency exchange machine or like an actual physical ATM. Like, I haven't used one of those things in years. It's all peer-to-peer stuff as well. So it's also just a bit nicer, because if you do a peer-to-peer trade with someone, you're naturally going to, you know, strike up a conversation with them. You realize, oh, we're both into Bitcoin, and we're both into the Bitcoin tangential stuff. So you've suddenly got a local friend. And, you know, when you're in places that you're not familiar with, whether it's, you know, for me, like West Africa or East Africa or something, or, you know, deepest, darkest Peru, it's useful to have those contacts. So with Bitcoin, you literally have a friend in every country in the entire world. Okay, maybe not Burundi. I don't know. Maybe there's a Bitcoiner in Burundi. Oh, no, I know a Bitcoiner in Burundi. I've just said that and now I've regretted it. Yeah. No, I met him at the Afro Bitcoin conference last year. I don't know why Burundi came to my mind. It's like one of the poorest countries in the world, like per GDP per capita. But I do know a Burundian Bitcoiner. So there is literally, I think that we can safely say there's a Bitcoiner in every country in the world now.
By the way,
you just reminded me, sorry, Nasco, that bumped into this chap who was from Guatemala, because we're thinking of almost definitely going to El Salvador for their adopting
circular economy, adopting Bitcoin.
And sorry, I didn't say hello because you were so busy. I was at Lugano, and you were at Lugano doing an amazing job comparing. But people were there from all over. I mean, it's a European conference, but there were people, as I say, met this lovely chap from Guatemala and telling me all about that place. And you know, you've got a contact to go, wow, I want to go there. If I go to El Salvador, why don't I go and check out Guatemala, for example?
Was that which was that one of the projects there? Was that Bitcoin Lake or Lago Bitcoin or one of those, or was it a different one?
No, it was a chap who, I don't want to dox him.
Yeah, of course.
Case, but yeah, he was kind of in the business, if you like. But yeah,
nice.
He mentioned those projects, but not part of them. But yeah,
by the way, By the way, Afrobeat Kibera, it was a project which had the grant from Geyser, just so you know, because we've been in that program as well, and there are different economists, and these guys, we've seen them in the Telegram groups as well. They're quite active.
Oh, good.
They got the grant, and this is how they got some free sats, and this is how it all started.
Nice.
By the way, I just had something because you've been almost everywhere, but part you haven't been in Arnhem, haven't you?
No, I haven't.
But I mean, the circular economy thing, it's probably in its very early ages. Would you agree with that? And being in Salvador, being in others, where did you feel that it's picking up most? Because Lugano as well, you can pay everywhere, but is the circular economy happening there? Is the circular economy happening in Prague? That's actually the question I had. It's a difficult one, but I don't know.
No, for sure. I mean, yeah, Lugano, there are people with Bitcoin in Switzerland, a lot. It's quite a rich country in that regard, and there's good privacy laws, and sort of Swiss culture naturally marries with Bitcoin culture. So I think that just orange pilling in Switzerland is a bit easier. But when it comes to like the idea of it being circular, I think that most people, I don't know, this is just anecdotal, but I think that most merchants are just accepting the Bitcoin immediately, getting it transferred to Swiss francs or maybe USDT, I'm not sure. Because I think it's a partnership with Bitfinex/Tether. So, but yeah, you can easily live on Bitcoin in Lugano. And Lugano is technically now more Bitcoin friendly than El Salvador, because in Lugano you can still pay your city taxes, all your like government fees, you can pay them in Bitcoin. Whereas in El Salvador, that was repealed with the IMF loan. So yeah, and then in terms of what the second part of the question was, where is it easiest to live on Bitcoin, or where like?
Now, where did you feel like it's picking up the circular economy thing? Yeah, between the merchants, do you have that feeling at all? Because we're still pushing that here. Not happening yet, but I mean, this is the initiative we're having. We're on that road.
Yeah, no, that's nice. I mean, the two places that jump to mind, no, three, is probably Madeira and then El Salvador, but it would be Berlin in El Salvador. And then I would say the South Africa's garden route, like along the south coast of South Africa, because that strip is just, every time I check BTC map for like between like Plettenberg Bay and my geography is all wrong here, but basically that southern tip of like South Africa, which is like the most beautiful drive, like one of the drives you have to do before you die, sort of thing. It's a bucket list adventure. One town there, Vitsund, it's called. I visited like 2.5 years ago, and there were already like 30 merchants in the town. It's since spread to the towns in the surrounding areas, and I know that staff are being paid in Bitcoin, and like tips are being paid in Bitcoin, and now they're sort of paying suppliers and other suppliers. It's like it's actually genuinely circulating this sort of like circular fashion, and so that's like a place where you can really feel it's picking up. And I really want to go back to South Africa actually to check it out and see what's going on there, and maybe document it too. Then Madeira is really picking up steam. Whether or not it's like circulating, like staying within this Bitcoin economy, is like really hard to quantify. But Andre Loja, who's the founder of Free Madeira, which is the Bitcoin movement there, he was saying to me on camera that some of the merchants are now paying each other in Bitcoin. So like the supermarket has Bitcoin, they'll pay the cheese guy that delivers it, and it gets spread in the circular fashion. And because Madeira has so much Bitcoin activity through Nostr meetups, through Bitcoin meetups, through Bitcoin OGs living there, there's quite a lot of like big name Bitcoin OGs that live on the island. There's just a lot more sort of activity, and it's being like shared in this circular fashion. I mean, one guy said to me that he would like his incentive to do a banger post on Nostr and to like actually earn some sats on Nostr was that the next morning he could pay for his breakfast. And I thought that was quite cool. It's like you're zapping someone who's then he's literally turning that social media clout into breakfast the next day. And then the third one I'd say is Berlin in El Salvador, which I've tried to make the case that it's the real Bitcoin city. Like Bukele promised this $17 billion Bitcoin city as one of his many promises that he never followed through on. But whatever, he's a marketing guy, that's his shtick. And then this sort of real Bitcoin city emerged, and it's like 2 hours away from San Salvador. And it's a tiny town, it's very poor. It's sort of forgotten in a way, but it's also got this real charm to it, and people are very authentic there. And these two Salvadorans moved from the capital city, went to Berlin, and they started onboarding merchants one by one, and then suddenly it sort of picked up steam, and now there's like maybe 160 merchants in this tiny town. So the Bitcoin sticker is everywhere, and you go ahead.
It's Evelyn, isn't it?
Evelyn and Gerardo, yeah.
I saw her at adopting Bitcoin in Netherlands, in Arnhem.
Oh, nice.
Amazing.
He'd be a great one for the podcast for you guys, because their experience is valuable.
Hopefully, we're going to have her in the next few days. Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, great.
After you, that's the plan.
But then, so the key thing, though, that I've noticed, or the trend I've noticed, is that you tend to have like an OG with energy and with like support, because usually it is like an OG initiative. I mean, I was going to mention a fourth place, which is Curacao. And in Curacao, there's again a load of Bitcoin-friendly merchants. Tends to be where the OG likes to spend their money anyway. But the key things are the OG needs to be well liked and respected in that area, because no one's going to trust you otherwise, because you're coming with this magic internet money in a place where, you know, education levels and literacy levels might not be super high, or where people have been scammed in the past. Then you also need to have like support, and that needs to be local and international. So like expats moving there, as well as like local Salvadoran Bitcoin owners or Curaçaoan Bitcoiners also showing interest in this. And then ideally you have a few meetups. Parties are better, because, you know, people have more fun at parties generally. And then slowly you sort of just keep sort of, I don't know, pumping that, and then eventually it sort of takes on its own steam and just keeps rolling and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But then, like, for every successful circular economy there is, I think there's, you know, a lot of economies that started up and sort of petered out after a while and really struggled. I think the annoying, like, sort of the sad thing about it is that you do need to have an injection of Bitcoin from someone or somewhere to at least to get it off the ground. And typically I've noticed that there has been an OG. And that is wicked. Like, you know, if a guy's got a couple hundred or, you know, a couple of thousand coins and he wants to make the world a better place, like, brilliant. What a fantastic use of time and energy. Like, help to make your country or your town or your village more Bitcoin friendly. But then I also wonder, I'm a bit like, oh, is this how it has to work? But then I kind of picture that, wait, this is how governments work, you know, but rather than like being taxed, the OG is doing it because they want to build that better world. So I'm kind of like, this is really cool. So if any OGs are listening to your podcast, then like, go on, like take a couple of % of your stack, take 1% of your stack, and just see what you can do with that in your local area to make the world a bit more orange. Because you'd be amazed at like how many Bitcoiners will then be like, shit, I need to go there. And then, you know, someone else will pop up, and then just connections start sparking. You've probably experienced this with your own Bitcoin journey in Bulgaria, right? Like, I wouldn't have come to Bulgaria if I didn't know that you guys and, you know, Plowman and George were doing, you know, so many things there.
By the way, because we probably wrapping up here, but need to mention Geyser, because Geyser is the best place where you have an initiative, you go and you get some sats, and this is what happened with us. This is why we're talking to you, because we started that journey because of Geyser. And when you go and spend some sats in a restaurant in Sofia, let's say in Bulgaria, if you spend whatever it's 50 euro, are we gonna give €5 in sats to the owner? And this is how the owner is actually getting orange pills, all thanks to Geyser. So huge thanks to everyone's listening. And there were quite a few supporters of the initiative. We don't know their names, of course. They were all anonymous on the platform. But yeah, it did happen, and exactly what you said is what happened to us. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's really cool. I'm sorry, I realized I've rambled loads and loads here. But yeah, what are you guys doing currently in Sofia? Like, what's the status of it?
We've onboarded like 20 restaurants in Sofia, and we are really aiming to get the good ones. Yeah, we don't want just every grill corner to be there, but we want to have a good Russian, good Indian, good Italian, good Greek. So you have all this variety. And one of the strategies was we have these free sats, and everyone pays here with Bitcoin. We're going to give you 10% on top of that, all from Geyser. And the other thing is, if you go and spend your sats, you fill the form and you get 5 or 10% back. In sats back. It starts working quite well, we must say, and it's a driver to make all these hodlers start thinking, okay, maybe that works, I'll try. We had quite the month with most Bitcoin payments was in April.
Nice.
I'm not going to mention numbers, but we already tracking numbers because we've got the Breed's wallet in, and when someone pays to a Breed's wallet, we know about that, so we can immediately handle sats to the owner.
Yeah, just to be clear, we have a platform, a food delivery platform.
Yeah.
Under the brand order.bg, but we're kind of overall calling it ordermoon.com with the sort of, the Bitcoin.
To the moon. It's going to the moon.
Yeah. And, within the app now we've integrated Breeze, Lightning. So
really?
That's really super cool. We're so excited. And of course we have all the tech related to the services that a restaurant would need, individual, table booking, all that good stuff. And of course, this could be white labeled for other circular economies, because so much of it is about venues, to onboard owners, and we have the tech, so it could be anywhere. So that's what we're after, to publicize what we've now got.
Oh, nice.
and use elsewhere.
Have you been met with the usual pushback of like, I would never spend my sats, or like it's too volatile? Or what have you found is the usual like pushback?
That's the usual one. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Typically, but people do get it, and I'm here in Bansko, and one of the first people that I onboarded, he says, "Yeah, you need to speak to Tisho down the road." And I said, "Yes, I know him very well. He's brilliant. Has an amazing wine bar. I'm going to have a chat." And sure enough, they were there and spending their sats. So they'll actually give their sats to each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what we're after. Is for more venues to accept, and for these people, as you say, that you can't get away from the price thing, that when the price moves up a bit, they become more interested. This skin in the game thing is hugely important. But so we're very, very keen to onboard even more people, and but we do have
Bulgaria still 0%, right? Bulgaria still 0%? There's no tax burden in Bulgaria for hodling. You hodl for 1 year and then you can spend it, and you don't have to declare anything, right?
There is a tax burden actually. But it's the personal tax rate is 10%, and corporate tax rate and dividend tax is 5%.
Oh, that's super low.
Yeah, so it's actually doing quite well. On the back of that, it brings in expats, foreigners, etc., and increasingly tourists as well into the capital. And here in the ski resort, we've had tourism for over 20 years. So yeah, it's a good place to visit, as you know. You've been here.
Yeah, it's really. I love Bulgaria. Yeah, it's great. People are great as well. It's fun. It's a freedom-loving country.
Yeah,
and big fan. I want to go skiing there again.
Yeah, I hope you do, and we look forward to seeing you on the slopes, joining in a video about Bitcoin. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. I just wanted to pick up one final point because we've gone just a bit past our time. I love your comment about journalism in Bitcoin, and we need to lift it to.
We do.
Better standard.
Yeah, we absolutely do. Yeah, it's an absolute joke what we have done as a industry so far. All we do is sort of like, this isn't supposed to be journalistic, right? This is a podcast interview, but the journalists we have in Bitcoin aren't actually asking good questions. They're not saying the quiet part out loud. They're not holding people to account, and effectively we're becoming like Fiat 2.0. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, why is everything about pumping my bags? It shouldn't be this way. We should be asking like questions. We should be using our platforms to educate and inform people as well. Like, yeah, sure, entertain. Like, it's funny that the memes are great. We know that Bitcoin is the answer. At least, most people with Bitcoin are pretty confident that this is the future that we're going into. So why don't we try to build that future on better foundations, which means better journalism. It means more integrity, more adherence to the truth. And I feel like every time I try to query this and push it a bit, I get pushback from people. They're like, oh no, like whether it's, Bukele in El Salvador, like, how dare you criticize him? He's done so much for the country. It's like, yes, he has. And he's also not exempt from scrutiny. Like, what are you going on about? And we tend to resort to sort of insults and memes and stuff as opposed to genuinely hashing stuff out. And I feel like the podcast circuit in particular, in the last cycle, we had some good podcast interviewers that would ask hard questions. But now I get the impression that a lot of podcasters are just asking softball questions because they want the sponsor money. And they know that, if you have you'll notice there's a trend of you have the CEO of the company on, and then the next month, that company is now the sponsor, Kel Surprise. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, I mean, the podcasts aren't pretending to be journalists, right? They're not. But, you just sort of crying out for that kind of decent journalism. Like, there are still some good writers, but I also wonder how much they are not coerced, but just caught up in the... in America, like, Bitcoin is now this sort of Republican thing. It's not neutral, like, at all. And, you saw the cover of the Wall Street Journal today said that, like, the MAGA crowd has invaded Bitcoin and they've shed their libertarian values. And that was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, which I thought was really interesting. There was a modicum of truth in that. Like, I was looking at the Vegas conference and I was like, where is there a Democrat? Like, is anyone in attendance a Democrat? It's clearly become a partisan issue in the US. And I feel like, why are there no US journalists, Bitcoin journalists, sort of asking this question? Like, maybe they have and I've missed it, but I just feel like we're letting a real opportunity to, tell good stories and, like, adhere to the truth. We're letting that opportunity slip through our hands, and we can do better because, with this Bitcoin world, we have the opportunity to do better. So we should. So I don't know if there's any aspiring journalists out there, then crack on, get involved.
Absolutely, I totally agree with everything you've been saying online. I think particularly because we go on about don't trust, verify, and that's our meme. We're not living up to it, I don't think, particularly.
There you go.
Yeah, good. On that high note.
Sorry, I brought us down a bit, haven't I? Sorry, guys. It's sunny in Bulgaria today, guys.
Yeah, it's all good.
You
Come to Bulgaria, let the sats flow here.
download order.bg before you go. Is that right?
Absolutely, definitely. And you can see me talking about Bitcoin on the 24th of June this month at the Bansko Nomad Fest. There you go.
Cool.
So let's get those nomads spending sats and accepting sats, as you say.
Yeah. Both is good. Both is great. No, cheers, Lance. Cheers, Nasco. It's lovely to hang out. Lovely to
Thank
see
you very much indeed.
And good luck with the new venture and the new podcast format as well. I hope it all goes well. And good luck to Bitcoin and Bulgaria. Great country, great people, and doing cool stuff with Bitcoin.
Thank you so much, George, for joining. All the best.
Cheers.